All right, welcome back. I'm here live again today, 2 days in a row. This is kind of new for me. I usually don't do this. I usually do these once per week. But as it stands, I always want to do these every single Wednesday. Other than Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve that are coming up, I'll do those the day before. But I love getting on here and sharing my thoughts around a topic. And it's kind of one of those chances where I actually get to just share what's actually happening right now in the heart of, well, in the middle of a week, right? Because so many things pop up and happen and things are talked about, things, news can break or stories can unfold. And this is a great way for me to get that and deliver that information to you as quickly as possible, but also to have a conversation about it. So if you're watching this video live or if you're watching the replay, drop a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are as we talk through these talking points. And just as the title and the thumbnail of this video describe, I'm really going to talk about the housing shortage here in Utah because there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding around why we always talk about we're in a housing shortage. There are even people that argue that that's not the case. And so I have my position. I'm going to share it, as well as the reasons why we are in a housing shortage. But more importantly, as we look to Utah's future, how we could fall into a hole where we're over 200,000 homes short, because that's the trajectory that we're currently on, despite the fact that we're building more homes than any other state in the country as a percentage, as a ratio between how many residents we have versus how many homes we're building. So I'm going to talk about that. But before I do, I just want to share something else first, because as I get on here every week, I like to also find some sort of news story or something that's worthy of sharing because I think it's interesting. And I wanted to share, because this just came out yesterday. I follow the local restaurant scene and everything and local happenings and everything like that. And right now we just had a restaurant that was featured as one of the top 50 restaurants in the country, according to the New York Times, whether you trust them as a source or not with respect to critiquing the nation's restaurants. But it's still cool because, Utah is not really well known for its dining scene, but it is drastically improved over the last decade or so. But this is pretty cool. The owner and the executive chef, Zach Wade, evidently this is his baby. This is his dream to bring a restaurant like this to Salt Lake City. He just relocated here himself from New York City. And this seems pretty cool that he's got a new restaurant here that just opened up in 2025 and it's already making this list. So my assumption, because this story just broke, it's going to be really, really difficult to see, to make reservations for this place, I think. And so anyway, I think this is a cool story because I scour these lists and I look at these restaurants that are not making the top lists, and I think they're pretty worthy of it. There are certainly a lot of restaurants in Utah, and especially in Salt Lake City and Park City, that are really starting to rival some of the places that you might understand or think of with respect to the best restaurants. And so, first of all, I want to share a comment. Hi, Anna. How are you? I hope you're doing well in Denver. Tell Brendan hello for me as well. I love comments just like this. It's really a good way for me to connect with people that are actually finding this information valuable. I love sharing this kind of stuff, all things Utah. And to be honest with you, my audience is not just people relocating here to Utah. It's also people who already live here. And so while about 70% of the people that reach out to me are people that are moving here and relocating here, it's also valuable information for those that already live here. So whether you already live here and you're on the fence about, do you want to stay here? Do you want to invest in real estate here? Do you want to purchase a home here? Or if you're looking to relocate, the main story that I really want to talk about today is this, and it is our housing shortage. It is definitely something that's top of mind. It's something that I talk about frequently in my videos as being, in my opinion, the greatest challenge and threat to Utah's future is that housing affordability is just out of control. And I just don't believe what's happening with the economy as a whole being very sustainable. We're not going to be able to keep up with what's happening. And if we really dive into what's happening with respect to the economy and where is all of the money flowing, that's really telling the story. And about 40% of the money in the S&P, it's going into AI. AI investment is leading the charge, and the biggest companies in the world are heavily investing so much of their money in each other, and it goes in this big circle, and it's propping up this economy. But how does that affect you, and how does that affect your way of life? Well, it's cost of living. It's all of the goods and the services that we have to pay for that ever since 2020 are just astronomically higher, and housing is at the forefront. And because that is my area of expertise, it's something I read about and study constantly. I'm always informing myself about what's happening with housing. And this most recent article that popped up is an article, it's popped up on multiple outlets, but it's a sobering projection that without big changes to how we're building homes here in Utah, Utah is on pace to be short about 235,000 homes over the next 30 years. So with an influx of growth, with the continued growth that we're seeing here in the state, both in natural growth, within the state, as well as in migration, people coming from other states or other countries even, we need more homes. And despite the fact that we're building more homes in Utah per 1,000 residents than any other state, it's simply not enough. In fact, as I go through this article, it's kind of, it is sobering to think that we could find ourselves in that big of a shortage, but it's labeled here as a wake-up report, because if we don't do something different now, it's not going to begin to change. And it's only going to impact you and I as residents of Utah to a degree that it's going to make it even that much more unaffordable to be able to live here. And I think that's a real problem. And I think it's the greatest threat to our state. And so I have some talking points that I really want to talk about with respect to housing demand, housing shortages, and everything in between. I have 10 talking points I'm going to talk about, because these are the things that if you're looking to buy here, if you're looking to invest here, the long-term projection with 5.5 million people coming in the next 25 years, not 5.5 million new people, but a total of 5.5 million people. In other words, growth of about 2 million people from where we currently are. It stands to reason that Utah's a really formidable power in terms of its economy, its growth, and it's going to be a great place to invest and to buy in and live in for a long, long time. The question is, can you actually afford to do it in the first place? So these 10 talking points about Utah's housing shortage are crucial. And so the first thing I really want to talk about is the fact that this problem it's just not going to go away. We have the youngest population in the entire country. And because of that, because we have the youngest population in the country, we're going to experience more growth. Now, that increase in population is slowing down, but we're still in a net positive. In other words, we have more people born here, and we're adding population naturally compared to those that are dying. So that natural growth that we're seeing here in the state of Utah, while it is slowing down over these last, handful of years or decade, it's still growing. And so the problem of housing shortages and the shortage of new construction homes, as well as any other home, is in great part due to our fast growing younger demographic. And we can't go back 30 years, 40 years when families had babies, and we can't reverse, the fact that we had children back then, and those people now need homes, and their kids will soon need homes. And so it's just something we have to always keep up with here in the state of Utah. More people, more individuals, more couples, more families, more multi-generational households, which is a big thing here, equals more housing needed, even without new in-migration. Even if we don't look at people moving into the state, we still need more houses. So I think that's the first talking point, and that's really a driving force behind Utah's growth. But we're already, as it currently stands, about 25 to 40,000 homes behind the current demand. That's already fairly sobering, because even though construction has been booming in the state of Utah, it remains a deeply underbuilt area over the last decade. And honestly, if we look all the way back to 2008 in the financial crisis, we've underbuilt every single year throughout that period of time since 2008, other than 1 year during the pandemic. So we're just not building enough home in this problem that we found ourselves in, as so many builders exited the market and people stopped building homes. We just find ourselves digging ourselves a bigger hole every single year. It's this compounding effect of what's almost now 2 decades worth of underbuilding. And if we don't drastically change things, it's going to be a problem. Now, I get a lot of pushback from people locally that don't want to see Utah change. They don't want to see Utah grow any more than it already has. I completely empathize with that position. I totally understand. that Utah has been such an incredible place, and the cities here have been such an incredible place to call home for so long. But if we don't grow, if we don't build more homes, those homes that you do have are going to be so astronomically expensive that your family won't be able to live here. You won't be able to live here. And so I think it's important to understand growth is inevitable. The changes that come with it are both good and bad. And the only way to deal with this is to change how we're approaching it, because we're now nearly 2 full decades in of not building enough homes. And for that reason, our prices keep going up. Now, that's a good thing if you own real estate and you're looking to maximize profits in terms of, is my property value going to increase over time? And I think it's fair to say that there's probably not another state in the country that's positioned better than Utah in terms of stability and long-term growth and just appreciation in general. It's a really good place for that type of play in terms of your investment in your home and in real estate investments. But it's this compounding effect that we're just not building enough homes. So my next talking point is something that a lot of people are obsessed with talking about, and that's interest rates. And many people thought that, well, we dipped down into really low interest rate territory during the pandemic. And I think it was an overreaction. Personally, I really genuinely feel that we put rates too low, and it put too much fuel on the fire of demand to the point where prices rose so incredibly fast. And because of that, so many people were able to refinance their mortgage with a 3% or even a 2.5% interest rate. And so by the time they had to reverse direction and raise interest rates tremendously a few years ago, it just had a different impact. It didn't work to fix the inventory problem, because rates, the rates slowed buyer demand down, but it did nothing to add more homes to the supply. And so really the real estate market is two things. It's the supply and the demand, and how the relationship between those two in any given market is taking place. So with fewer people listing homes, move up sellers are staying put, the builders started slowing down, the inventory stayed below what's needed for a healthy market, like all these things. Now, even though we've seen inventory rise quite a bit, which is really nice to see, because during those pandemic years, we had such limited inventory. There were only a couple of weeks of inventory on the entire market. And so now we're sitting at just about 4.25 months of supply over the entire market, which is more of a balanced market. Anytime you get in between that 4 to 6 month territory, some consider it 3 to 5 months, that's the territory where you're fairly balanced. And for that reason, we're seeing real estate prices appreciate a couple few percent per year, but at least they're not jumping up drastically, which is really nice. They're kind of staying on par with current inflation rates. So interest rates, what's going to happen? Nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball. But what I can say is that we've got to fix the supply problem and not just focus on manipulating everything with interest rates. That's the lever that the Federal Reserve gets to use to manipulate not only the economy, but our country, and also the monetary supply that will dictate what happens in our real estate market. But we really, locally here in the state of Utah, we need to focus on solving the supply problem, which is houses. So many people bought a house or owned a house for many years. They were able to either purchase or refinance at a very low interest rate during the pandemic, maybe at 3% or even below 3%. And now the prospect of them moving to a nicer home is daunting, because moving from that $500,000 home up to a $750,000 home is a massive increase in their monthly payment, because they're going from a 3% mortgage to a 6.5% mortgage. It's a big difference, and it's really kind of frozen a massive sector of the market in terms of sellers, potential sellers that would otherwise be selling. And so I think a lot of people would love to move, but they just don't find any solution or any possibility of them even really considering it, because that payment is going to be so much higher when they purchase. So that's a big deal. So next talking point, number 4, is, I just want to stress this one more time because it's important as a portion of the equation here, that Utah leads the nation in building. And it's still not enough. Despite the fact that we build more homes per 1,000 residents, it's just not enough. And so even though we can tout that as a statistic, as, hey, we're doing our best to keep up, it's just not enough. our demand outpaces the supply. And it's because we have more kids here in this state than any other state in the country. And it's also a very strong, stable relocation market. It's a place where people will continually move to. And I talk about this all the time in my videos, where this really started happening in the early 2000s, or maybe even, it was right around the 2002 Winter Olympics. And I view that moment in time as kind of Utah's coming out party. It's the time and the moment when everything changed. That's when the world found out about Utah. And it wasn't just those diehard skiers anymore that were looking for a second home moving from California. It was people were like, wow, this is a great place. Why don't we consider living here? And more importantly, the jobs, the companies started opening up the possibility of, hey, why don't we go to Utah? It's such a strong workforce. They're a more reliable workforce. They're healthier people. They're more bilingual than any other population in the country that aren't native English or Spanish speakers. And so there's a lot of reasons for a company to fall in love with the prospect of relocating or adding a workforce here in Utah, because we're one of the most educated workforces. We, at that time, we were underpaid. Wages here were very low. And so the prospects for these companies coming in was pretty compelling. It was a really good reason. And that kind of kicked things off in terms of our growth here. And despite the fact, again, that we build so many houses, we're just not keeping up. We've got to make some changes. So all this leads me into my next talking point, which is just the job market. It grows faster than housing, right? And so new companies, the tech expansion, Texas Instruments is expanding an $11 billion expansion there in Lehigh of their semiconductor plant there, as well as, healthcare, finance, universities, outdoor recreation companies, you name it. Utah's economy is incredibly diverse, and it's not like one person or one company dominates here. Unlike other markets like Seattle or in California or back on the East Coast. In fact, I also saw a map earlier, I think it was yesterday, that shows the income disparity between the top 1% earners versus the bottom 20% earners. And Utah was number one in the country in terms of being the most balanced. And I think it's a testament to what makes up Utah's economy. It's not like we have, the Bill Gates or the Jeff Bezos or Elon Musks of the world dominating with some massive company here. We have a very diverse economy that when one industry is down, other industries are still thriving. And for that reason, it's incredibly stable. So because of this, housing production still isn't keeping up. Our job market continues to grow. And it's not like it's taking these massive leaps that are just crazy, and then we see a bubble form and then the bubble pops. What we're noticing is just incredibly steady growth. That's just Utah's mantra in every sense of the word, in the phrase. It's something that it's always been that way here, and it's continuing to prove itself as just the identity that is Utah. So our job market is putting more pressure on the housing market. So again, to reiterate, this housing shortage that we're finding ourselves in is driven, honestly, this affordable housing situation is being controlled more by supply, in my opinion, than interest rates. It's that relationship between supply and demand. And because of that, we've got to do something to change the supply side of the equation. This is where the real long-term pressure is going to apply itself to Utah's real estate market. So with more supply equals more balance, more options, and eventually, hopefully, more affordability for Utah families. I don't see the opportunity for prices to really come down anymore. I really don't. If that were to happen, it would have already happened over these last few years. And this year, as the market has softened even more, I would even increase the odds that I don't think that prices are really going to tank any more than they already are. They've been propped up, whether it be synthetically through builders that are using so many incentives to keep houses moving, even during these increased interest rate environments. I just don't see a crash coming. I don't see this bubble popping. I see a bubble in terms of AI across the entire economy. I think that could likely pop. And of course, that will send ripples or waves through the economy in every sector, more than likely. But with respect to real estate here in Utah, it's certainly not a bubble. The conditions that we have in the marketplace today are the exact opposite of what happened in 2008. And so we don't see that that pop happening or that bubble forming. And eventually, in my opinion, I feel like best case scenario, we stop real estate prices from going up. And we keep that steady over the course of a long period of time. And when I say that, I mean maybe a decade, maybe 2 decades, so that wages and everything else can catch up. Because as the value of the US dollar has fallen because we've created so much more money in our money supply, it's just not going to be the same. It's never going back to pre-2020 times. We will never go back. So we're creating a new sense of what's normal today and moving forward. And it's going to take a long time to balance out that supply and demand inequality. And it's going to be important to do so that prices don't increase. I think best case scenario, prices stay flat or flatter than they have in many years in the past, so that everything else can catch up. Now, hopefully, some people think that there's going to be a crash. Some people think that there's going to be this massive 20, 30, 40% correction. I don't think that that's going to happen. I actually think it could be healthy if, to some degree, a crash would happen. I think that would be great. Not for everybody, because people lose their jobs when crashes happen. That's not something to really root for in any economy. But in the sense of creating affordable housing, I think it's important that at least we keep prices at bay. So, next talking point on our housing shortage. Let's talk about investors and first-time buyers and how they're competing for the same entry-level homes. Because when there aren't enough new starter homes being built, everyone chases the existing ones. And that's just driving the prices up of those starter homes. And that's making it really hard for locals to stay in Utah. Because when somebody's buying that starter home, what we used to call a starter home, and now it's costing $550,000, it's really hard to compete for some people that are only able to spend $400,000. And so it's becoming more and more challenging to find those homes that are in those price points. It's incredibly difficult. It's not impossible. I still do it every single month with some of my clients, but it's definitely something that's more challenging. And it's the entry level homes. And I think this is a major component as to the problem within our economy as a whole, that we're just not building starter homes. If you look back in time, back in the 1970s, I was born in 1978. And in the 70s, we were building nearly 1 million starter homes. To qualify that, I'm saying a starter home is under 1,500 square feet. And now we don't build, and that's across the entire country. And now we don't build hardly any, less than 100,000. And so it's like, even though our population is increasing, even though the demand for starter homes is more now than ever because of the cost of everything in life, we don't need 3,000 square feet for everybody. We need starter homes. But the problem is that policies, not only here in Utah, but throughout the entire country, have incentivized the suburban sprawl and the development and the building of homes that are more expensive. You make more money as a home builder and a developer when you when you build a little bit bigger homes, right? Wild Banshee, here's a comment. Cash doesn't help either. No, of course, cash. I mean, we saw what happened when you infuse a ton of cash into the economy in the pandemic. And it's part of the reason why we have higher prices today, because as you create more money, it becomes worth less. And combined with how different it is today versus the 1980s, it takes now 10 to 12 times your income to be able to buy a house. For example, if you make $50,000 a year and you want to buy a $500,000 home, which in Utah is kind of a starter home. I mean, honestly, that's a starter home here. It's 10 times your income. And when you factor in the value of $1 today versus the value of $1 back then, it doesn't stretch as far. So that's a valid point. Hey, Justin, what's up, man? Good seeing you. I think overall, though, the big picture here is that the household size in Utah is also shrinking. And that's my next talking point, by the way. Yes, birth rates are dropping. They're decreasing, even here in Utah, where we make more babies than any other state in the country. But it's important to say that just because families and household sizes are shrinking with fewer children being born, that doesn't mean that smaller families mean fewer houses. Because sometimes, a smaller family plus more individual households equals more units that are needed. And so just because we only have one child per, one or two kids instead of two or three or four or five, we still need houses. So it doesn't really fix the problem. It does dictate a little bit to a degree how big of homes we need, but we can't go back and rebuild the homes that are already built. It's just going to affect new home construction moving forward. So that's another talking point. The next talking point, this is the next thing I want to talk about, is building is getting slower and more expensive. Land, labor, materials, zoning, permitting, and political hurdles stretch out timelines and increase costs. This bottleneck shows production at the exact moment Utah needs more homes, not fewer. As everybody knows and understands, and everybody's fully aware, prices have gone up. Everything seems expensive. You go to the grocery store, you check out, and you think to yourself, I just paid how much for that one bag of groceries? Or I just paid that much for that? It's really astonishing how different things are today versus 5 years ago. And that manifests itself in the form of buying a house. Nowhere different. I mean, I can look at houses today that I'm looking at buying a house that's, now we're here in 2025, and I'm looking at when the house was built in 2019. And it's just like, wow, I wish I had a time capsule or a time machine. I could just go back in time and buy it then, because it was literally half the price. Well, we're not going back. It's not going to change. And as the building costs get slower and more expensive, I think it stands to reason that there's room for innovation. There's room for innovation in how we approach things, how we build things, how we accommodate the great need we have for starter homes and for more homes. Because if we start building and get effective with how we build starter homes, like we used to in this country, then maybe, just maybe, we can soften that burden on the existing home market, which will then keep prices stable and lower, and without letting them increase beyond what they already are. And I think that's healthy. I think that's healthy for the people of Utah and in general. And maybe it's not as healthy if you're looking to buy a house, live in it 3 years, and then sell it and make $100,000. Of course, that's not healthy for you, but I think that's a very one-sided way of looking at things. And of course, we all want appreciation in our real estate when we do buy. But I think it's proven that Utah is one of the best places to sit on a house and let it appreciate. And that's over time. Next, let's cover my last talking point. It's the long-term solution that is needed to fix the problem to begin with. It's more housing in every category. We need more single-family homes. We need more townhomes. We need more condos. We need more multifamily homes. We need more infill development. We need more mixed use. We need more redevelopment. We need more of everything. So this is going to affect vacant land with new development, single-family homes, everything in between. We need everything. Utah can't solve affordability, growth, or stability by adding more units across just one spectrum. We need to add units across all of them. And I know a lot of people that are locals, they don't want to see the higher density housing. And that's not just a Utah thing, that's nationwide. A lot of communities and cities are really pushing back, and they always have, on higher density housing. But it is especially so in Utah, the answer to part of the problem. No one thing will solve this imbalance between supply and demand and housing affordability, but this is certainly one of the ways that we can solve this problem, is to actually build more in every one of these sectors, because there's demand for all of it. And my hope is that my children can afford to live here one day. That's really my biggest hope here. And despite the fact that what many people might think, because I'm a real estate broker, well, Scott, you're very probably intrigued and excited about prices rising and rising and rising. And while, you could argue that would be the case, I'm actually a much bigger fan of prices staying at bay, because it means more people can buy. And that includes my own family, my own kids. And so I think that's crucial to Utah's future. And hopefully we have a lot more restaurants in Utah, like this restaurant that was announced in Cosmica and being one of the top 50 restaurants in the country. But hopefully we have more of those things that will enhance the way of life here in Utah. And hopefully I can be a part of that and share those stories here on my channel for many, many years to come, because that's my vision. This is what I love to do. And hopefully, I can answer your questions as well. So if you have a question, drop it on the comment below. Even if this video is not live, I come back and I look at those comments and I do respond to them and answer those questions. And if, as always, if you're looking to make the move within the state or to the state of Utah, that's why I'm here. That's why I do this stuff every single week. I absolutely love it. And I love connecting with real people just like you. So if that's you, reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation and get things started, get you off on the right foot. Make sure that you have the proper guidance in making that transaction happen and making your American dream come true as well, which is really fun and exciting for me. But also, if you're looking for more information about what the market here is in Utah, I do these live videos every single week, as well as the other videos that really impact the answers. Well, it really impacts people because they're answering the questions that I'm getting from people that are making the move. And so as I continue down this path, hopefully you find value in my content here. And if it is valuable, please subscribe to the channel. It does help me, but more importantly, it puts those videos in front of you to help you as well. And if you're looking to learn more about life in Utah, reach out to me. And until next week's video, thanks, you guys.